rightly said, and I told him to stop me. So you have to choose that you have to worry about financing because corporates, we have no time to get into what to do with those corporates who are over-leveraged. Many of them willful defaulters. The banks, we know they are over-leveraged. How do you do the funding? And institutional mechanism for constructing infrastructure. Thank you very much. Sorry to have taken a long time.
Friends, I apologize that I had to cut Mr. Bajaj short. He is so full of ideas and so full of wit and humor. But I have a time constraint because the next session starts at 12. And I'll just start one question from both of the eminent panelists and then throw it open. I've got a series of questions, but we'll make it very short. See, today India has two major demands. One is jobs. And on the other hand, we have a shortage of capital. So when you are looking for manufacturing, what sector would you prefer? Is it labor intensive? Is it innovation intensive? Or would it still be large manufacturing which is capital intensive?
You know, I don't think the question should be in terms of is it labor intensive or is it anything else. If you want to manufacture, you have to manufacture in a way which makes it globally competitive. Whatever makes it globally competitive, whether by using more labor or more technology or more capital, you follow that technology. It should not be. I think the policy which says we should adopt labor-intensive technology is wrong. It has to be competitive technologies, competitive methods. I think that's what I would advocate, that you just only focus on competitiveness. That is all. The jobs follow once you make competitive products and expand your markets, because a lot of jobs happen not in manufacturing, but in all the activities downstream of manufacturing.
100% correct. Just to put it in different words, as Peter Drucker said also, whether to make profit or run a company, your aim is not to provide employment. Your aim is to satisfactorily meet the needs of customers. That's your aim, otherwise you won't survive. In the process, there's a very important byproduct that you provide employment. Now, if it's automated, if it's labor intensive, fine. So in other words, but I 100% agree with what Kero said, I will make something or choose a method for making it which enables me in relation to my competition sell my product, cost, quality, technology-wise. I employ people because my politician friend tells me to employ. और गाड़ी मेरा माल तो कोई खरीदेगा नहीं तो क्या पॉलिटिशियन खरीदेगा?
Well, I have a series of questions here. I'll just air one. How can make... From the floor. How can Make in India program compete with the various trade commitments that we are making?
Trade commitment, free trade.
I don't think there's any contradiction in the two at all, because if we make competitive products, and that's the condition, competitive products, all trade agreements will be for our benefit, because I believe in India we can make products far more competitively than anywhere else, provided all the non-value adding costs which are added to manufacturing today, the subsidies which manufacturing has to give to other sectors are removed, and we are given a level playing field.
I'm very happy to hear the word level playing field, because, you know, when our Prime Minister, worthy Prime Minister, apart from, as Sudhir said earlier, Swachh Bharat and Stand Up India and all, but when he announced Make in India, for exports, foreigners come in, but Make in India, here we want employment, here we want growth. I was delighted, not only because I enjoyed the fact that it should be made in India, but because some of you who are not as old, but a little bit older than children like him, may remember that in 93, 94, I became very famous. Mr. Vandriwala will remember uh, for becoming the sole member of the Bombay Club. There were 15 other people. सब चुप हो गए. Government ने बोला चुप हो गए. हमको government ने बोला ही नहीं चुप होने को. They knew कि it will not serve any purpose. So I became identified as a single member Bombay Club protectionist. It was never a protectionist club, but I was called protectionist. It was for a level playing field. That's all. So, lot of free trade agreements we have signed. Not only recently, as I said, it helps their exports to us rather than our exports to them. Maybe it is because we are not internationally competitive, but the reality has to be looked at. The Babus, in the earlier government also, I won't name names of the higher level, were told to do that. It's only that dust number which was stopping reform, no. But wherever dust number was not involved, reforms was going on. Sat number wanted reforms, if you know what I mean. Yeah, so a lot of trade agreements were doing this, from Sri Lanka to Southeast Asia. So I think, as Kero said, there's necessarily no conflict, but the world does things which are good for the world in the correct sense of the term, not in a narrow sense. Otherwise, we just lost out to the US in the WTO in a particular case when they took us to WTO. So we cannot fight WTO, because if we keep losing there, then the markets will get close to us. But subject to that, for years, the developed world preached to us free trade, benefits of free trade. Now the shoe is pinching. They are not practicing free trade, America and Europe. But forget what they call mode 4. Forget what's happening to migration, which is, after the Second World War, the biggest problem Europe is facing. And the solutions are not easy, whether Angela Merkel, and that's another big, long story. So we have to do ultimately in an intelligent, sensible way, as they do, what's good for us, good for Indians, good for Indian companies, and I don't care what the free trade agreement says or whatever it is, and we should make in India.
One other question from the floor. I'm rephrasing the question. Does automation or disruptive technology come in the way of job creation?
I don't think so. Again, the answer is the same as I gave earlier. As long as you're doing it in India, creating the value addition in India, and you make it competitively in respect of all other people making the same products, therefore you sell, whereas others become lower, you get the biggest market share. I think that's what we need. I don't think we should go into the means, as Rahul said. It's the end which matters. That is your product best accepted by the customer or not?
I think I agree. The answer is correct to the extent what Keru has said, what we should do. We should do the right thing. But the question is slightly different, that if I understood it, I refer to that, will disruptive technologies affect employment or something like that? This is being discussed all over the world. And I think the answer is not fully known. हम क्या करेंगे बात है, हमको तो ठीक चीज़ करनी है हमारे फायदे के लिए, जिससे हमारा माल बिके. I should be, as he said, competitive here, and I have to be ultimately competitive internationally in this globalized world. But where will, you see, technological development, innovation is bad enough. This disruptive technology and digitalization and algorithms and all requires 2 days of meetings with great experts. I don't even understand what they are talking. आप लोग समझेंगे, but मैं तो सीधा साधा आदमी हूँ, तो I don't understand all that. Nobody knows, I think, the implications of that on employment generation. Nobody knows, according to me. And I've just come in end of January from Davos. I mean, there are 50 presidents and prime ministers, 1,200 chairmen of the world companies, top technological experts from Silicon Valley, some of whom I know, and everybody will give some answer or the other, but I don't think we know the answer. It doesn't mean don't develop. As I said, if you don't develop, somebody else will develop, but we have to see what happens.
I'll just add, there have been lots of disruptive technologies in the past. They've only led to higher employment. Whether it was digital photography, whether it was cell phones, smartphones, What has happened? It's not reduced employment, it's increased employment.
Even railways, at one time, it must have been disruptive.
Everything disrupts and a new thing comes along.
Okay, we have just 3 minutes more. So 2 quick questions, very short, Mr. Kalra.
Sir, with due respect to the icons of manufacturing sitting here on the stage, I think the argument that manufacturing generates more jobs than services is somewhat flawed. We should look at the bottom of the pyramid in hospitality, in healthcare, in tourism, even in BPO. I think the number of jobs that those sectors create can be far more than manufacturing, particularly when we are going in for automation and all. If we don't go for automation, basic manufacturing, lower end of the manufacturing, then we can't be competitive. And let's also face it that we will probably never be able to create the atmosphere that China has done in manufacturing, the sweatshops, the 14-hour shifts, will not be able to do that. So why is it that, why should we not carry on with services and all that? What's wrong with that argument? Why should we be so emotional that, manufacturing must come first before and make in India and all that? I'm sorry if I'm being a different argument I'm putting, but I don't see anything wrong in that.
There's nothing wrong in growing the hospitality industry. But I think what you're missing out is that for a number of people who want jobs in India, hospitality industry or any such industry cannot possibly provide the jobs required. It's not possible. Please work out the mathematics of what you need for creating jobs in the hospitality industry for 12, 14 million people every year, people coming from the rural areas. Manufacturing doesn't create jobs only in manufacturing. When a car or a scooter goes out to the market, it creates job in its sales, in its maintenance, repairs, spare parts, insurance, banking. The whole lot of industries develop around it, which would not happen if there was no manufacturing. There would be no tourism if there was the other benefits which flow to the economy from manufacturing. It will not happen. And as I said earlier, no big country with a large population has ever grown anywhere without manufacturing.
No, I don't have anything to add to that. I don't think we said there'll be more in this or less in that, but I share what Keru said. But if we are ending, I think I'll just add one thing. I think from whatever I see here, almost all of us here, we have an important economic role to play in this country and for our country and for exports or whatever it is. We are the major economic players in this country, and I think we have to be conscious that we keep talking with the government and the bureaucracy, but we should be mindful of our very important role in this economy, and we should, in a very honest manner, fulfill our responsibility towards, without becoming a saint or no, I'm not a saint, but in a responsible manner, our responsibility towards our nation.